much for staying with us. We continue with the conversation we've been having beyond the scars with my guests, Grace Nzomo, Clinton Ontita, Honorable Elizabeth Wangoi, and we're now joined by Julie Nasuju, whom we've been waiting for. Karibu sana, Julie. So keep your feedback coming at Grace Korea KE, at KTN News KE. I see it. I'll be sampling it at the end of the program. So Julie, once again, Karibu. And of course, I'm coming back with you. Earlier on, Grace, Clinton, and Elizabeth here had shared, their journeys with us, growing up, how they were born. And interesting, like for Elizabeth here, we did find out that she was not born with the condition, vitiligo. It just happened one day when she was 14. She didn't know what was happening to her body. So I don't know, we want to hear your story too, Julie.
Okay. So basically, my vitiligo started when I was 1.5 years. That is when I was a small child. And I'm not the one who discovered it. It is my mom who discovered it at an early age, because at first it started on the private area, and she thought that the house girls were burning me with the napkins. They were letting me stay a lot with the napkins or the diapers. And basically that's when my vitiligo started. And at first she did not know what it was. And when we went to hospital, the doctors could not know it yet until she came to around 5 hospitals, and then she finally concluded on being told that it is vitiligo by Dr. Bansal. Yeah.
Okay. So now for you, growing up, you've largely, all your life.
Yeah, basically all my life I've lived with vitiligo.
Okay. So at what point did you discover that, you're a little different from,
when I was in class 1, that is when I was around 6 years. Yeah.
How was your interaction with them?
Basically at that time I was not talking very much with many people, and that is because most people used to point at me very much, and for me I always asked myself why they're pointing at me, until I asked my mom, why am I different from the rest of the kids? Why do I have these white spots? Because at that time it had started around my lips, my eyes, and my fingertips. And during that time it was kind of confusing for me as a child. Yeah. Basically, I can just talk about it when I was a teenager, because that's when I would feel very bad because of the way people used to make fun of me in school. And that time I was around 10 years, 11, 12. And I was being bullied a lot. But eventually I got to stood up for myself when I was around class 8, and that was kind of a turnaround for my life. Yeah.
I'm interested in knowing, what did it take for you to stand up for yourself, and how did you do it?
It's kind of a very funny story, and something that is not advisable to many kids. Basically, there was this lady who was constantly making fun of me, like every day for almost 2 years.
A classmate?
Yeah, a classmate, almost 2 years. And I finally reached the end of her making fun of me, and I decided to, during these times there were these fights that you close with the term, and I decided to close with her. Apparently I won the fight, and after that I kind of gained respect from the other kids, and all the people making fun of me kind of ended at that time. So when I went to high school, because I knew in Form 1 most people will make fun of me still and I'll still be bullied, I decided to to use my skin condition to my advantage. So basically vitiligo is not contagious, but I told everyone in school that it is contagious. So everything that was mine was never touched. No one was ever near me. And since I was used to being a loner, it was kind of very easy for me to pass through my Form 1. But as time went by, people noticed, no, this is a lie. How comes when the sheets are being changed and all that, or just most of their friends who were near me would notice even if I touch their things, nothing. And then they asked me to be honest to them, and that's when I told them it's not contagious. But by then I'd already passed Form 1, I was going to Form 2. Yeah.
So by this time you've already accepted yourself.
That time I hadn't accepted myself fully. It was kind of a phase I was going through, but
because you're still young.
Yeah. So most of the problem when we're going to funkies, everybody's staring at me, and I used to be the chick who would be outside most of the time. I wasn't somebody who would be the books very much, but cultural activities were my thing. Drama festivals, music festivals, and all that. I was always out there, and even games. And basically, yes. I can tell
you mentioned funkies, and you reminded me something, because of course that is where the girls with the boys and everything. And Wangoi here was telling us about how she had a boyfriend at 19, and upon him discovering what's happening to her body and everything, he left her. I don't know, did you have any experience with a boyfriend?
Basically, I can tell you, when I was in high school, I didn't have much of a social relationship. I wasn't very conversant with the other kids. I used to stay by myself very much. But I used to have fun just being by myself, apparently. But when I finished high school, it was when everything changed for me. And there was an experience that I went through that made me leave my parents' house, and I ended up living with a guy. And that time he was my boyfriend, and that was the beginning of everything. Basically, right now I'm a mother of 4 kids, and the first kid I got out of that time when I left home in search of my biological father. And it wasn't easy because the family rejected me after I got pregnant. We had a sit down together with the family, the in-laws and all, and they kind of rejected me. And after that, I moved on with my life, with my mom taking care of me. And I met another guy at the same time when I was passing through all that, but I had gotten my first child, and I got my second child, and this guy just disappeared up to this day. In age, I do not know where he is. And my third born, I got into another relationship, which was not kind of pretty. It was basically sad for me because I entered this relationship with desperation of feeling loved and affection, and I wanted a family very badly. That in the process, this guy took advantage of my situation and abused me and made me feel like I'm a nobody. And during that time, there were so many times I tried to commit suicide because of the way I was feeling inside of me, but I got strength out of it. In the end, after I left that relationship, is when I discovered that I am somebody and nobody should not bring me down. And this was the change of my life. That is around 2014. And that is when I started doing what I'm doing right now.
Okay. Allow me to ask, you mentioned your father, right?
Yeah.
You want to talk about it?
It's not quite a good experience for me. My father rejected me because of my skin condition.
Because of your condition?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, you prefer we?
I prefer
Okay, that's fine. Let me let you, breathe, take a break a little, and go back to Clinton now. Because Clinton, you're Mr. Albinism Kenya 2018. Tell us about that.
Basically, Mr. and Miss Albinism is a beauty pageant that came up to create awareness about persons living with albinism. For me, I can say it was a very beautiful experience, getting to walk on stage, gaining the confidence, getting to create awareness. It was a really beautiful experience, and we look to do more such events in the near future. The pageant basically draws persons with albinism from all counties around Kenya, and we go through a series of auditions, and we get a specific number depending on the requirements. Last year's pageant was East Africa, so it comprised of Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, and probably in the near future it might go further to include countries from the African continent. Yes.
And when you won, I mean, it's expected, you were excited, did you see it coming, or what feelings did you have after you won the title?
It was a beautiful experience, but unfortunately I wasn't crowned as the winner. Yes, but I did come close though. And for me, all I can say is generally the process of being in the academy, getting to interact with persons with albinism from Uganda, Tanzania, it was a very good feeling, getting to know how it is from their side, how the challenges they are facing, and perhaps how the government and other stakeholders are coming in to help ease the burden.
Okay. Grace, being the HR, NIC Bank, and again, I go back to what Wangui was telling us about her experience when she was working as, a teller in a bank, and customers would, keep off the queue. They would rather queue at a place where there are, lots of other customers. But how has it been for you, rising up to the rank of an HR?
Well, as I said, the way my parents brought me up now gave me the confidence to do whatever I wanted to do in life. So I normally tell people everything needs confidence. If you have the confidence, you can even fake it till you make it. So being in NIC, I got it through the normal procedures that everyone has to go through, where you do the tests, you do interviews, and of course now once you get into the workforce, yes, you can get that special opportunity to get into the workforce to the 5%, but keeping that job requires hard work. So NIC is a place where you're constantly stretched every day, and that is something that I really wanted, because I believe in stretching the limits, and that is how I've been brought up by my mother, that you don't take anything as a stumbling block. Even when I was forced to learn Braille in high school, she said it's only for 4 years, and then afterwards it will teach you something. So I normally tell also other people, anyone, whatever struggles you go through, they toughen you up and they lead you to something even better. So that's how it has been for NIC. Every struggle where you have to tell people that you need this kind of assistance and this kind of assistance, it's helped people even understand albinism more, and even now be open to even having more people with albinism, like Clinton just joined the other day as well. So we are hoping also he'll create his own impact, and we are all different. People with albinism, people have different confidence levels, they have different ways of expressing themselves. So having that diversity, and when you know one person with albinism, it's not a compromisation of everyone else, it's just that one person, and we are all different, but we share the same struggles.
Wow, love your spirit, Grace. Wangui, you did talk about being in politics and being the ambassador of vitiligo before we took the break, but I want to know how your encounter with now other people living with vitiligo has been, from children to people your age, men, especially because we don't have a man on set. If you could talk on their behalf.
It's been a beautiful experience and a tough one at the same time, because you'll meet children who are even below 8 years who have it already all over their body, and I've met children whose parents have actually abandoned them, and it's been a tough journey. I've also met people who are of us who got it after 70 years, someone who got it at 90, 80 years, and the older someone gets it, I've realized the tougher it affects them. Because I've met these old people, and then they normally tell me, I wish God will just take me right now, because why wait till I'm 70 then get vitiligo? And it's tough having to tell them, you know what, it's not about God giving you, it's about you just accepting yourself. Yes, it's tough. It's really tough, especially after 70. I think it's tougher than when I was 14, because you've lived all your life, and then at 70 you get something that you don't know.
So you have encountered people who've gotten vitiligo at the age of 70. All
Actually,
their life they've been.
I've also met people who've gotten it at 90 years, and it's tough. It's really tough. And being a young person, just trying to tell them it's going to be okay is also tough, because they're saying, no, you're young, but why am I getting it right now? So you have to encourage them, talk to them, and just tell them it's a normal thing. It's just that you don't tell them antibodies, you just tell them it's a normal thing, and they should accept it. You talk to them, you spend time with them, you revisit them, because every family I've met, I've revisited them, just to talk to them and see, how are you doing, how is it going? The children who I've met who've been abandoned, most of them are living with their grandparents. We normally communicate and just talk, how are they doing in school, and you'll find most of them are really performing well in school. I think because they realize, if I don't do this, who will do it? I have to perform to be a better person in the society, because if I don't perform, then how will I make it in the society living with this condition? So you really have to perform. And I talked to them and encouraged them. We've had like 3 cases of suicide in Kenya of persons living with vitiligo. And it was a tough experience talking to the parents and the families. And yeah, we continue encouraging them. I revisit families I've visited. Parents call me, the people I give sunscreen call me. We normally do it with Julie. When I cannot do it, I'll tell Julie to take over and do it. When I feel I'm really pressed with work, Julie normally takes over. So it's a good experience, it's beautiful, and encouraging them is what, I think finding a purpose where I think that's my purpose, just getting these people with vitiligo, talking to them, distributing sunscreen, revisiting them, telling them, you know what, you can make it in life. Even I was at that particular point in life, but here I am just changing the society and perceptions of persons living with vitiligo.
At what point did you meet Julie?
It's a funny story. When I was an MCA, she told me she kept looking for me, but now they couldn't find me. The first time she called me, I asked her, who are you and what do you want? Then she told me it's Julie. I told her, Julie who? She's like, Julie Nasuju, and I'm living with vitiligo. We'd love to meet you and talk to you. So I met her in 2014. We've been friends. We've been best friends since then. We work together, and it's a beautiful journey working together as best friends and just changing the society. Yeah, I met her in 2014.
Okay, so Julie, this is now where you tell us, what you've been up to, working with Wangui here, and also as a model.
Okay, basically, I'll start on the model side. I started let me just start by, I've gone for a function, and this is where I met one of the producers of Big Ideas Entertainment. And one of them kind of noticed me after taking a photo of me and kind of told me, you're actually you're photogenic. Let me just say that, you're photogenic, and I think you should think about taking more photos about yourself. And after he took a photo of me and he went to the studios, and then they called me up for a photo shoot. So after the photo shoot is when we moved out, and they kind of gave out my photos all over to most studios and other people they are working with. And I ended up landing with Gina Mtone, who's a director of a movie called Leo. And she called me up and asked if I could come and do a soundtrack of a movie that was coming out. And I got an opportunity to work with Sauti Sol in that song, and that's when everything began. For me, I was like, if I had just left all these things that were hurtful for me, and the first thing that I landed was a gig with Sauti Sol, one of the biggest boy bands here in Kenya, then I believe I can do many things than what I perceive myself into doing, and I started building my confidence from there. So after that is when I met a group called Vitiligo. It's actually a society in Kenya, Vitiligo Society of Kenya. And when I met up with them, I had already started my own foundation, and then I discovered that there is another foundation that has been there since 2011, and that's when they told me about Njeri. And I was like, why haven't you people looked for her? And we should combine our efforts together and do something and create awareness here in Kenya, because I believe not many people know about vitiligo, especially by how people perceive us when they meet us in the street, how they react, and it kind of is disturbing to the mind how people treat you in the first look. Yeah. So I called her up and I asked her if we could meet, and to be honest, it was hard to get her. And I do understand, because of the position she was in, she was quite reluctant to meet up with many people. But afterwards, after doing a few projects here and there, is when she came along, and I invited her to one of the projects that was Purple Love and campaign, and that's when we started our journey as a model representing vitiligo. That's where I started my journey. And I called her up and we kind of moved on together.
Okay. I'm curious though, because you mentioned about how people treat you, and again I go back to Njeri, Wangui, Elizabeth, all those names I has, and she told us that people would have issues even shaking hands with her. Have you encountered that?
I think I've encountered a lot. Perceiving when I was in primary, no one was ever near me. No one wanted even to share a pencil with me. After that, high school, I blame myself because I told everyone it's contagious. But in the end, in around when I was in Form 4 and all that, and I explained to people what vitiligo is, and it was much easier to communicate with people. But now after that, leaving high school, now meeting the real world, going to look for a job, here comes the biggest challenge. My first experience was I had gone to ask for a job in a supermarket, and I could not be given a job in a supermarket because they said I will infect all the customers and I will chase the customers away. So I asked the owner of the supermarket, how will I infect the customers? And everything is packed on papers. They're in packages. How am I infecting it? This lady just got mad at me and she was like, leave this place. You're creating a lot of drama. And so I left. In other places, you'll just by show of appearance, they'll be like, no, you cannot work. And for me at that time, I was looking for a position of being a receptionist. And that is kind of a very big problem because the face is what they look for. And I would not get an opportunity to do that. So looking for a job is kind of hard when you're having this skin condition. And also, when you meet up with people, the stigma of how people stare at you would make you go crazy. Some will either stare at you, laugh at you. Some will stare and be amazed, be shocked. Some would even fall down as they're staring at you. On a serious note, I'm telling you something that I watched me myself. Sometimes I laugh when I see somebody falling down.
They're falling out of shock, or they stared at you for too long.
Stared for me too long, and then they get bumped to something, and then they fall down, and I'm like, oh my God, you have just gone where you were going. So, except that, basically, it's one stigma. If you're not somebody who's confident about who you are, you cannot stand. You'll end up isolating yourself either indoors or never talk to anyone.
Okay. So we need to wrap up. I need to get your closing remarks in 30 seconds, for all of you. Let me start with you, Grace. And you need to tie, a message to people living with, albinism.
My call for action is also on the media, because the killings going on in Tanzania and Mali and Morocco, all those countries, caused by lack of awareness. So the media can also really, really help us in creating awareness about albinism, in sharing positive stories as opposed to the negative stories. Because maybe we've noticed the last trends, when you see a suicide case and it's shared on media, 5 more follow. So I would really encourage also the media to share positive stories, and also people with albinism to always think positively about themselves, because no one will accept you if you don't accept yourself. And the world takes you at your estimate. So just always be your best and be your biggest cheerleader, because that's what will help you.
Sure, but I think that applies for all of us.
All of us.
We all have to be our biggest cheerleaders. Clinton?
I'd like to speak about disability in general. What I've come to learn is that in this life we are living, no one is ever going to hand you everything you want on a silver platter. I do understand in that there are some specific cases that are very difficult to they're very difficult to work around, but then I believe you should take it up on your own to make sure that you bring out the best in yourself. In as much as the disabilities might be limiting, you should work past that and try to make something of yourself. It really breaks my heart when I see persons with disabilities out in the streets begging. There are some cases I do understand it's really not helpable, if I can say that. But in some cases, let's say albinism, in as much as we have short eyesight, I do believe we can work with that and bring the best within us. Yes.
Okay. Julie, 30 seconds. Your closing remarks.
Okay, the first thing I'd say is that God is the one who made us the way we are, and we are wonderfully and beautifully made. That's something that should stick in your mind. My mom kept on telling me that, and I would encourage any single parent who has a child who has vitiligo to continually tell this child this way, that God made you this way. You should accept yourself the way you are, and you're beautifully and wonderfully made. For me, I take it as art, and I always say God decided to make people who are white, albinos, blacks, brown, and you're given both colors. So this is a kind of an advantage for you. You can go anywhere in the world and not be judged because you have both colors. So take it the positive way and don't look at the negative side.
Wangoi, we have 30 minutes. You have the last say.
I normally finish up by saying vitiligo is beautiful. It's God's art, and I'd tell someone living with vitiligo out that it might take you 10 years, 8 years, 5 years, 2 years to build your confidence, but one day you'll be confident. Just take your time to appreciate yourself, who you are, talk to yourself, give yourself pep talks, even when it's really tough. Just talk to yourself and pray a lot. Prayer really helps. And for parents with children living with vitiligo, let them socialize, let them play like normal kids, but just ensure they apply sunscreen. It's a beautiful thing. Vitiligo is beautiful, and God's art.
Sure. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Wangoi, Julie Nasuju, Clinton Ontita, and Grace Nzomba. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your feedback. Zen Susie saying blessings from the universe, just as saying such an inspiring conversation. Lots of you saying, urging you to keep on, especially with the sensitization for people who, have conditions that you do. Once again, we appreciate you coming. Thank you so much for all the feedback. My name is Grace Korea. 11 a.m. we'll have Inside Politics with Penkitili, and I'll be back at 1 p.m. for Weekend at 1. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for tuning in.